Back to the channel. Today I'm going to go over and compare three common ways to do lookups using XLOOKUP, VLOOKUP, and a combination of index and match. And I'll go over their strengths and weaknesses and when you may want to use one versus the other. So in this example, I've got some employee expenses, I've got store, name, amount, and I've got also a table here that shows what department each one of these people belong to. And so I'm going to fill in this department field using a lookup function. So I'm going to start with the really simple XLOOKUP function, which is the newest lookup function Excel's released, and it makes the lookup process incredibly easy. So let's say I'm going to look up, let's say Liam Johnson here as my example. So with XLOOKUP, the process for doing a lookup is fairly simple. We're selecting our lookup value and our lookup array. So this is where we're looking for that name. So this is a list of the employee names, and then the return array. So this is where I want to pull the results from. So that's my department. This is my results. This is my lookup. These are my results, and close. And so it tells me that Liam Johnson belongs to the sales department. So it's correct. Now, let's do the same thing for VLOOKUP. So again, I'm going to use Liam Johnson as my example as well here. Now, one of the disadvantages of using VLOOKUP is it can only go searching from left to right. So the problem that I'm going to have right away here is that this table, this lookup table, is sorted in the opposite direction where we've got the department, then the name. So I'll show you what I mean. So if I use a VLOOKUP here, select my lookup value, the same as with XLOOKUP. Now I select my table array, so I have to select my entire table, but I have to specify a column index number. And this is the problem here, because how VLOOKUP works is it's going to look in the leftmost column. Like I didn't specify the array that I wanted to look through. It automatically is going to look for the leftmost column. So this is already going to be an error because Liam Johnson does not show up in this column. And I can't put an index number of -1 to go backwards, or I can't put 2. Either way, it's going to give me an error because it's going to look for that leftmost column, right? So if I entered, let's just say 2, which is where I would want to pull it from. So this is what the normal VLOOKUP function will look like. You're specifying your value. You've got 2 columns, and you're selecting from the second column. Maybe you want the first column as well, but let's just say in this case, second column, and we're looking for an exact match, and I'm going to get an NA, a not available error. And this is just because, this VLOOKUP function is looking in the leftmost column. That person is not found. If, however, I flip this around, so I'm going to cut and paste. So cut and insert cells here. Now it's going to work. Now notice the XLOOKUP, it still worked because the range is automatically adjusted. And that's a great thing with Excel, is that your formulas will automatically adjust if you move stuff around. Not in all cases, but if you're just cutting and pasting, then it works fine. But VLOOKUP, I'll have to change the function here. So right now, looking at I to I need to look at H to I. And again, second column, false. Now it's going to give me the correct value because now Liam Johnson is in that leftmost column. So now it's looking at column H, and then it's finding that value, and then it's returning the second column in that range. If I specified this to 1, then it would just be the first column. It would give me the exact same result of Liam Johnson. But if I want the second column, the second column in the table, then I specify 2, and we get that result. So obviously the big disadvantage of VLOOKUP is that, if we had our lookup tables structured in the opposite way, where we have department and then the name, then VLOOKUP wouldn't work for us unless we basically restructured our spreadsheet. And that's not always a possibility. You can't just rearrange your spreadsheet for the sake of a VLOOKUP function. It's just not really practical. So what a lot of people do is they use a combination of index and match. So this can be a good alternative. So I'm going to copy and paste Liam Johnson one more time here. And now I'm going to use index and match. So this is basically before XLOOKUP came around, this was the best alternative available. for a lot of people. And so what you do is you use the index function. So here you can specify the array that you want to pull your values from. So think of this as the return array in the XLOOKUP function. So we're going to say, okay, we want the values to come from the department field. Now, as for the row number, this is where we have to use the match function, because what the match function does is it says, okay, we're going to look up this value, and this is our lookup array, and put 0 for an exact match. So it's going to find Liam Johnson in here and say, okay, found him on row 2. So it's going to get the second value from that initial array. And I can specify a column number as well, but because I've only selected one column in my index, I can just leave this to 1. And that's often easier. Unless you're actually selecting a huge table, you don't really need to set this to anything but 1. So to keep it simple, I would suggest just selecting one column here, and then one column here, and then always setting this to 1. And that way you don't have to worry about counting what column to pull from. It's always going to be 1. So now if I do this, we get Liam Johnson, right? So we've got the same, we get sales. So we get the same result using each one of these functions, right? So index and match, as you can see, the drawback of index and match is it's a bit more complicated because we have to spend a bit more time setting it up. The advantage of VLOOKUP is, I mean, you can almost do this function in your sleep if you've used VLOOKUP so many times. You know, just type in a couple characters, select your lookup, select your range, column number, right? So a lot of people can do this on automatic. It's a really simple function to use. Index and match takes a little bit more time, but it's more flexible than VLOOKUP, whereas XLOOKUP is the most versatile or the easiest to use in the sense that we don't have to worry about using another function within this. We're just selecting our two arrays. And now if I flip this one more time, let's say move the department around, you know, the only one that causes a problem is the VLOOKUP, right? So if I move stuff around, now VLOOKUP doesn't know what to do because we've got the wrong reference. And if I change this back to H, again, it's not going to find Liam Johnson. So as you can see, index and match and XLOOKUP, they both work, but VLOOKUP doesn't, right? So that's the big drawback. The only reason you may not want to use XLOOKUP, and it can be a big reason, and that's because it's not going to be available on older versions of Excel. So if you work in an office and you've got Excel 2010 or even 2013 or newer versions than that, it still may not be available. So if you're running Office 365, then sure, it's not a problem. You can use XLOOKUP, but the problem is if you've got it and works on your computer, you send it off to another person who may not have access to XLOOKUP, they're going to get a name error saying, okay, Excel doesn't know what this function is because it's an older version of Excel. It's not going to know what XLOOKUP is. So that's the main drawback of XLOOKUP. If you're using an older version of Excel or you're potentially sending the file to someone who may be on an older version of Excel, you may want to avoid using XLOOKUP. In that case, index and match may be your best option. But that being said, VLOOKUP still may work in the majority of cases, just because, depending on how your data is structured, it may not be an issue. You may have it where you've got name and department, so let's flip this around one more time. So if I put name, then the department, and again, I'll have to change this one last time, then, it could still work. And so that's why VLOOKUP can make a lot of sense. You just select the value, select the range, true, false, done, right? A really simple formula to set up and copy down, so it works really easily. So that's the big advantage, but obviously you can use XLOOKUP or a combination of index and match. Ultimately, it's going to determine, it's going to be based on how your spreadsheet is structured, right? If it's in this format where you've got your lookup field always on the left, then you're fine with VLOOKUP. If you're not, index and match is your go-to. And if you're using a newer version of Excel and the file will always be on a computer that's using a fairly new version of Excel, then you can use XLOOKUP. But either one of these functions can potentially work. which one you select is going to be dependent on your situation, how the file is going to be used, and what format your data is structured in. So hope you found this video useful, and please leave a like if you did like it, and be sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching.